We're not getting anything over here.
Oh yeah, just noticed that. Alright, let's take a look at it. Yeah, let me take a look at the Apollo again.
Oh, okay, yeah. We lost Apollo B.
Alright, let's stop
We
this.
lost Apollo B. It says none on the matrix.
No, this has nothing to do with it. This has nothing to do with the Apollo. This is all inside of Studio One.
All right.
All of it's.
Okay, we got to move them all over. That's
No.
the change we made.
Oh right,
That's the change we made.
Because we
That's the change.
because in the
we
matrix,
made.
the matrix is going to change the matrix up here.
Yep.
It's not going to change what we did here.
Yeah, we have to move all of that.
All right, so this is.
There they go. There we go. There we go.
Right, now we just have.
Okay, now. Yeah, we got to relabel this so I know what color.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're going to leave vocals way down here.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, we know we got the fusion working, right?
Yeah. Now, that transformer button. Oh, listen to that bass. Listen to the bass. Yeah. Yeah, you're going to leave that transformer in for the rest of your life.
So now if we bypass this, you get the brightness?
It's subtle. It's subtle. But it works. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's badass, man. That is badass. That is badass. That's a fucking
And then you just turn down the output, and that's going to control the print track too.
That's
That's with the output all the way down.
yeah. That's a fucking winner right there.
That controls. Okay, so let's explain. Let's explain what you did. Okay, so we got the fusion working now. Or Dave got the fusion working. So the fusion, the way we interpreted the instructions, we thought originally we wanted to insert it after the bus compressor on the board, but it doesn't seem like we can do that. It seems like it always, according to the manual, it seems like it has to be before the compressor, and the compressor is the last thing it hits. The compressor on the board is the last thing that it hits before it goes out to the speakers, right? We could not put the fusion afterwards. We'll look into that. I'll talk with James just to see if we're thinking about that wrong, but we got it working, and all the controls definitely work. So Dave has got, I'll bring over the iPhone and we'll explain at the patch bay exactly what we did, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bring it on
So
over.
let me get the iPhone out. And this is all going to be, for at least for now, everything on the patch bay is pretty much hard patched, right? We're going to leave everything disconnected. So, all right. So what do we do on the patch?
All right, so on the patch bay right
bay.
now. On the patch bay right now, this set here is to feed to the mains. Okay.
Right.
So this is where I have the fusion plugged in, and then this is the insert loop on the mains.
Right.
So I came out the insert loop on the mains into the fusion.
Yep.
Out of the fusion back into the insert loop.
Right.
Okay. Then that's feeding the mains out, coming out here, and then the mains are going into the X16 on that pair there.
Right.
So this is the last thing into the X16. That's your print track.
I was going to say that is the print track that goes back into the DAW.
That's the print track, and that's
Right.
also what's feeding the monitors.
That's right. And that also
Okay.
feeds the speakers.
Yep.
Exactly.
So everything ends up right here. So it goes fusion, insert point out into fusion, fusion out into the insert, and then mains out into the X16.
Right. Okay.
That's not going to change unless we change locations of something.
The only way that would change is if you wanted to move the fusion to something else, somewhere else
Yeah.
in the signal chain.
Yeah,
but
then you
that's
have to
pretty much
pull
going to
that.
stay on the master bus. So our
Yep.
master bus, hardware-wise, is the fusion into the bus compressor on the board, and that gives us our, there's a compressor, high frequency compressor on the Fusion. There's a shelving EQ, the transformer, the saturation and drive. Then it hits the bus compressor on the board. Then it goes into the DAW. That's the master bus chain, right?
That's it.
Okay,
that's
so
the master bus.
So that's what we got for now. So now the next thing, what are we gonna try to do next now?
Well, I don't know at this point, unless you want to start. I think what we need to do now is we need to do the bus routing,
Right.
and make sure that that's all working through the patch bay, and then we
Right.
can maybe start trying to patch one piece of hardware into it and see how that
Yeah,
works.
we thought we were going to do because we're going to run out of room on the patch bay, so we thought we were going to do the drum bus. Maybe try to get the NG bus compressor into our drum bus.
Yeah, we'll get the NG bus compressor in and see how that goes. And once we got that, then we're about as far as we can go.
We're going to try to get all 8 groups so we can print them back into the DAW for stems, right? Are we going to have payload
Not
for
yet.
that? Not yet. Okay.
We don't. I mean, we could. We have enough. We have enough D subs to do it if you want to do that.
Okay. But
Okay.
that's well. First priority is we want to get the drum bus chain, the NG bus compressor on the drum bus.
Yep.
And want to be able to print. Well, no, and then from there, then the drum bus, once it's processed, goes directly to the main anyway by using this.
Yes.
That goes to the mix.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then after that, we can try, if there's time, can we get all of these so we can print them?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll see where we're at, and that might be call it a day for now.
Yeah, we'll see where we are.
Because
and then we can actually try mixing something with the thing.
Yeah, that's true. We can pull this up. Right now the session that we have pulled up is just raw audio.
Yep.
We normalized the audio, we leveled it, we gain staged it into the board, but we just pushed up the fader. There's no EQ, there's no compression, there's no nothing. We're just trying to get audio to work.
Okay, so at this point,
so that's what we're going to do next. How do we,
okay, it's alive.
Okay, how do you on the board though take it in or out? Or maybe you can't.
Let's see.
I'm just curious. Not that you want to, but how do you Okay, let's explain on video what you did there. Okay, so now we have the NG bus compressor by Wes Audio is on our drum bus. So we got our drum bus working. We have our bus compressor on the drum bus, right? We did the Fusion, now we're on the NG bus compressor. That's going to kind of live on the drum bus for now. So again, Dave's got that wired into the patch bay. Let's show you how that is kind of patched in. So,
you want to show them the back of the patch bay too for a
sure,
second?
we can do that. You want to do that first?
Yeah, show them the back of the patch bay.
Okay.
Take them back there. So the way we have the patch bay set up right now.
Where's the patch bay? It's down here on the
Patch bay's
bottom.
down here on the bottom,
in blue, right?
Yeah, the way we have the patch bay set up right now is these two sets of D subs.
Let me just move this. Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, these two sets of D subs are the 8 bus send and return, the 8 stereo buses. So there's 16 channels total.
16 mono buses, 8 stereo pairs.
Okay,
right.
so that's those two.
Those are the group channels.
Then this is the mains. These are the mains and the main inserts in and outs.
Right.
Okay. So then this one here is the one that jumps up to the X16. That's the main. That's the feed from the main to the X16 for the print track and the monitors.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So now down on this bank here, this is the first set of inserts for the hardware.
Okay.
So I've got these two. These are 8 pairs. These are eight circuits again. So on the Fusion, I've got 1 and 2 as left and right, in and out.
Yep.
So there's 2 snakes, 1 in, 1 out.
Yep.
And then 3 and 4 are coming over here to the NG bus.
Right. So that's one D sub. That's the D sub down here that has 8 has 8 channels in
Yeah,
it.
and we
so
still have...
two of those channels are going to the Fusion.
Yeah.
The other 2 channels are going to the NG bus compressor.
And we still have 2 more. We still have 4 more channels that we can use.
We can to the Aphex.
Yeah, to the Aphex.
We can do
next.
we can do that. We can do that to the Aphex.
We can do the Aphex
That's just
next.
gonna. Well, no, the Aphex is only gonna go on just kick and snare.
Okay, that would be an insert. Then we would actually
Right.
need. We would actually need to do the
This what we're talking about here is for the group
Yeah,
channels
we're
only.
we're only playing with groups right now because we don't have the D subs for the rest of it yet.
Okay, so if we wanted to say put the Dione on in the Titan on the base bus, you could do that.
We could do that right now. Yes.
Well, we're not going to do that yet.
Yeah.
We're gonna wait on that.
Yeah.
I think what we're going to do, if we can we do? Do we have the cabling to run the Aphex to the kick snare? So then our drums are taken care of. Our drums are taken care of. Our drum bus is taken care of.
We need to set up an aux loop.
Okay.
So we need 2 more D subs. We do have 2 more D subs now.
Yep.
Just the Planet Waves ones now. So we could set it up now at least to see if it works.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, we could do it. We could absolutely do it. If you want to get the Aphex onto the kick and snare, we could definitely do that.
Okay, so we'll try that next, and then we'll come back and we'll show you what we're going to do after that. If we use the
How many aux
aux
sends do we have?
we have 4.
We're gonna we can't give up 2 aux sends to the kick and the snare because then we'll only have 2 left.
Right, for reverbs and delays.
Right,
We think we're going to eventually do. We think we're going to do. Well, we are at least going to do. Once that we have some hardware reverbs coming in and some delays. So we have one coming in. It's easier to use reverb and delay with the aux sends as opposed to using plugins. Although you can do it, but there's a lot more of a workaround that has to happen. At least that's how we see it. So we're thinking we're going to keep the aux sends for the reverbs and delay units. That'll eventually happen. And then that means if we want to put the Aphex on a kick and snare, then that means we have to sum the kick tracks in the DAW and bring it out to 1 fader. And then sum
Yeah.
the
Good job.
snare tracks onto 1 fader, which is what we originally did. And then I changed it and said it'd be nice to have the kick like snare top, snare bottom on its own separate track.
But if you want to use the Aphex on a summed kick and a summed snare, you have to sum them off the board. No
Well,
other terms.
Snare top though, right? So
That's up. Yeah, that you
we're
could
not going to
probably,
put the Aphex on. I don't think we're going to put the Aphex on the snare bottom.
So do you want to do the Aphex on the kick in and the snare top, or do you want to put the Aphex on the kick out and the snare top?
I think we have to sum the kicks and bring 1 kick out, and we can blend them in the DAW.
Yep.
The kick in, kick out, kick sub. If there were 3 kick tracks, those are going to be summed together. I mean, we have enough physical channels on the board to make them all separate.
Mm-hmm.
But now the Aphex is where it becomes, unless you use an aux.
Yep.
And you'd have to chew up 2 of those auxes, right? 1 for each channel.
Yep. Yeah.
That's something to think about. So what do you think we ought to do?
I think you have to decide now if you want to sum the kick or not sum the kick.
Right.
Because the only way we can do it, like you said, snare top is easy, kick is not.
I think we have
So-
to. I think we have to sum the kick.
Right.
Because the Aphex is going to add the exciter on the bottom. You want it to be to the whole kick drum, not just one of the kick mics.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that's how we'll have to do it. And again, it can always be changed. This all shit can all be changed later.
Yeah.
But we're trying to set this up with all this hardware and stuff as like, what do we call this? Phase 1, like version 1.
Yeah. Yeah. This is
version version
attempt
1 of the
number
work.
one.
Yeah, version
Yeah.
1 of the workflow.
Yep.
6 months from now, after we've done a bunch of mixing on this and worked on this and really felt our way around it, we may say, you know what? Maybe we need to change an insert point. Maybe we need to change the matrix a little bit. And what's great about this workflow is this could be done 50 different ways, any way you want, as long as you got enough I/O and as long as you got enough patch bays
And enough cables.
and enough cables, you can do this any which way you want. So I think you're right. I think we sub the kicks. We can leave the snare top and bottom separate, and we can only put the Aphex on the snare top.
Fair enough. there. So that's the loop for the Aphex. Okay?
Okay.
So let's see if that does us anything.
Okay, so if we got,
Mix.
he's playing the kicks right now.
Yep, and it's on the Aphex.
So both kick in and kick out are blended in the DAW going to channel 1.
Right, so you need your snare top.
Well, now I gotta see, let's see here. This has gotta go to,
You're on the Aphex, Dave.
but do I have to insert it here?
No, you're on it. It's on it.
Turn it, yeah, turn down the, here.
Let's see.
Does that have any effect on anything? I don't know that it does because we gotta hit, now it does.
Oh,
See?
yeah.
You gotta hit the insert here.
Yeah.
And you can make it pre or post,
Yeah.
insert in, and then you can make it pre.
Alright, so what do you want to do
But you
here?
you probably want to make it post fader, I would think.
Big bottom.
Or no, pre fader because it's processing.
Ooh,
Right?
yeah. Big bottom. Yep. Oh yeah, that's working good right there.
Right, and that's blended the two kicks.
Yeah. Alright. So the kick is working.
So that's where you would blend it like this. And if you take it out of the circuit, now it's out. Now it's in. Okay, so now the snare is snare. Here's snare top. Insert.
Yeah, but you're on channel 3. You need to be on channel 2. Because that's where I've got it patched.
Well, it would be. Oh, okay. So
You gotta do snare top, has to go to line 2 now. So send snare 2 to kick out. For now. Send snare top to kick out for now. Okay?
So now we're on.
Now
two.
we're on it. We're reading it here.
Right. Oh, it's probably too cute off like a kick drum. We don't want that.
Yeah. Now, like I said, if you wanted to just put like the kick in on the Aphex, we could route it that
No,
way.
I gotta put it in. Hold on.
Yep.
Now it's on.
Yep. And it's right, and it's functioning over here.
Out. In.
You're gonna want to adjust this. I got everything pretty much dying right now.
Yeah, that's just so we can hear it, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, I got everything is pretty much dying.
so now if we just let's get a kick snare pattern here. Right, so now if you took them out, that's out.
Yep. And that's in.
Right.
That's in.
Okay, so that works.
Yeah. See again. I've said it a few times. We have to redo the template. We have to lock in the template.
Yeah, because now we're changing. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's
we have
fine.
to redo the template because we got to lock it in
But
now.
it works.
It works.
It works.
Yep.
So now we have the Aphex 204 hard patch to the channel 1, channel 2 on the board, which is the kick snare. So in the DAW, if there's however many kick tracks there are, you need to blend them, come out to one channel on the board, so you can put the Aphex on the whole kick drum, and then we just have the snare top on channel 2 coming out to channel 2 on the board. The Aphex is only affecting the snare top. Snare bottom could still come out on a separate track, right, if we want to do that.
Yes.
And that's all inserted with 2 little buttons on the board that takes the insert in and out, and that's working. Once again, I'll show you the patch bay, and Dave can explain what we're doing on the patch bay here for this.
Now we have 2 more D subs plugged into the back
Right,
on these last 8 now.
right.
Now the problem I have with that, like I said, is we're giving up these 6 because that D sub, we're not using it. You know what I mean?
We're only using 2
Yeah.
of the 8
Yeah.
channels inside the D sub.
So I have on the back of that, I have the kick routed to channel 1 on the Aphex, and I have the snare
Right.
top routed to channel 2 on the Aphex, which is just jumped from this is the actual feed This is
Right.
the actual D subs from the board for the kick, send, and return.
Yep.
And then this is where the Aphex is.
Right.
So you got your kick out to your Aphex in, your Aphex out to your kick in.
Right.
And then the same thing for the snare. Your snare out from the board to the Aphex in.
Right.
The snare out of the Aphex back into the board.
Right.
Simple loop. That's just simple in and out loop this time.
Right. So what's going to happen is we're going to have a second patch bay that's going to sit underneath here for the rest of the hardware when we get to it. But the good news is, even though that, and it does. One thing I hate about patch bays is that can look confusing. But the good news is we're not going to be pulling any cables.
No.
If you have dedicated chains like what we're trying to do, dedicated hardware chains, that's just getting you in and out, but those can stay there. That doesn't ever really have to move. It's a kind of a set it and forget it thing, at least for now.
The way I'm seeing us do this, if we have a second patch bay,
Yep.
is we're going to have the top patch bay is going to be the board inserts and returns.
Yep.
And then the bottom patch bay is going to be all the hardware patching.
Right.
So we're going to be jumping from one patch bay up and down to the other.
Right.
But that way we have like the board all running through one patch bay, all the hardware plugged into the other patch bay.
Yep.
And then it's less confusing that way, and then we'll get it all labeled up. Because right now there's no point labeling it because we're going to pull it all apart.
We're going to pull it all apart anyway. Right. Right.
So, but
Plus,
once we get that all set up, there's going to be, because of the nature of D-sub routing, there's going to be a lot of wasted space on those things. There's going to be. There's no way to get around it.
Right.
Like we gave up just for the main inserts, we gave up a whole bank just for the main.
Unless on the others, you got the D sub that goes in the board, but on the other side, I wonder if they must make like a D sub to XLR pigtail.
Oh, they do, but then you'd have to get a different kind of
patch bay. Right.
If you're going to be using a D sub patch bay, then this is the way it works. Now, if you were going to do a D sub to XLR, then yeah, we could definitely just pick and choose what goes in. And
So
what
does it
doesn't.
make sense for the second patch bay to be a D sub to XLR?
It might, yeah, because we could use the D-sub connections for all the hardware and then have the XLR, but you know what the problem with it is, though, is you're not going to get that many connections on it. Because an XLR board isn't going to have as many connections as this does with the D-subs.
Right.
So, yeah, no, let's just stick with it the way it is
Stick
and
it
deal
the way
with
it
the
is.
waste.
Just stay with it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we got so far. So now we have the NG bus compressor is all wired up and working. We have the Aphex 204 on the kick and the snare. We have the Fusion on the master bus.
Yeah.
That's everything we think probably for today.
That's about as far as we can go without another patch bay, to be honest with you.
Right. And then so all of this stuff is all going to go on, and the distressor is all going to go on separate channels. We also have a reverb unit that's coming in here.
Yep.
And it wouldn't surprise me if I end up with a delay unit.
Oh, no.
As well.
No. Well, we have that. We have the Radial Ecstasy 500 rack unit.
Right.
That we can patch in as well. I have a reverb and a delay pedal with me to try on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're also going to put the LA2A.
All right, the LA2A is going to go down there, but we need it. But we can't do any of that really till we get the other patch bay.
No, we're done. We're done.
We're done with patch bay for today.
We're out. Yeah. We ran out of patch bay way sooner than we wanted to.
No, that's okay though.
Way
No, that's okay. Okay, so we can push. Well, we're going to change out that one
when that cable. Yeah.
When that cable shows up.
When the cable shows up.
Why don't we now? We'll take a break for lunch. We'll redo our template, and then hopefully by then our other we're waiting for FedEx to deliver 2 more 10-foot D sub cables, so we can replace one of the cheaper cables, so they're all the same Jumper Z, the more high quality cables.
And then we can also set up the
rest of the groups.
Which well we can't do the stems out because we can do this. We can try the stems out on the groups to the X16 if we get the cables.
The 2 cables.
Yeah, we get those 2 cables. We can purpose 2 of those areas for the stems out.
And that'll allow us to print the 8 stereo channel stems back into Studio One, like the print track. So. Yep. What you would typically print back in is your stems and your print track, because we don't. I mean, you could print all the individual tracks, but we're not set up to do that. And
that's like you said. That's 2 more X16s. We can't do that.
No,
we can't.
It's too much I/O right now. Yeah. So that's where we are. So we're going to take a break here, and then when we come back, we'll probably we'll have a conclusion section of this at the end
or something.
We'll sit down and chat about a summary of everything that got done today.
We worked out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so we're here now at the end of day 4, and I don't know what you've seen so far because I haven't edited the video yet, but we thought it would be a good idea to just kind of summarize what we've accomplished today in case it's not all clear in the when I go to edit the video, and then what's the next phase. So for today, we got a lot done. We really got 6 major things done today. We rewired, we pulled all the cables out of the origin, out of the console, because we had some new D-sub cables that came in that were more appropriate lengths, and we relabeled and repurposed and then rewired the board from scratch and started from step 1 and did some cable management, which I'll show some video of somewhere in the video. Then we got the first, beyond that, the first thing we got done is we got our SSL Fusion patched into the patch bay. Well, first we got our patch bay hooked up, which is down here. You guys will see it on camera here. So it's all kind of permanently patched, sticking with the thought process of dedicated chains for now. So we got the patch bay installed and wired. We got the Fusion going to the patch bay, which is inserted hard patched on the master bus. It's coming before the G-Series bus compressor on the board. We weren't able and not even sure if you could put that Fusion before or after. It looks like you can only put it before. It looks like the bus compressor has to be the last thing the audio hits. Yeah. But we're still not 100% sure on that, but we think we are. But it sounds great anyway.
Oh, hell yeah.
The thing sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Then we focused really the rest of the hardware on the drum bus first. So we got the NG bus compressor by West Audio. That is permanently living on the drum bus, and it sounds great. And we also patched in on the kick and the snare, the Aphex 204, which is an exciter with a big bottom, which we just kind of hard patched on the kick and snare, always on the kick and snare. After that, we got all our 8 stereo groups, our 16 mono buses into 8 stereo groups. We got everything figured out and routed. And we're able to now print those stems back into the DAW along with the 2 stereo print track. So that's all taken care of. And then we reconfigured the I/O matrix for the Apollos and the I/O matrix for Studio One, the DAW right now, and tried to commit to a template that every mix, regardless of the tracks, the channels are all assigned to certain specific elements, and then you bring in your audio and you route it to those elements. And if for some reason we're not using, for example, tom 3, because there's no third tom in that song, the fader just sits down. It doesn't get used and gets muted or whatever. And then that way, everything on the board from a routing perspective, all the little switches and such to route all the tracks to the busing system is all engaged. Everything stays engaged. And
it's not going to change the bus routing to the hardware.
Nope.
If we have the Aphex unit is hard patched on the kick and the snare track, so they always have to be the same track.
They always got to be track 1 and 2 because that's where the Aphex is. Unless you have a patch bay where you can move hardware around, and we decided, at least for now, that didn't seem to make sense. Plus, usually even in the DAW, whenever we mix, it's for me, track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 through 10 are drums. They're always drums. They've always had been drums in the box. So that's the way we wanted to do it on the board. And trying to take the approach of simplicity and trying to keep it consistent from session to session. The other thing that's going to do, as we gain staged the preamps coming into the board and got some of the switches and the things routed, it'll also help with any kind of recalling. Because those things are kind of a set it and forget it kind of a thing. So the only thing that really moves on the board from session to session are obviously the fader positions and the EQ. Everything else, for the most part, could pretty much stay stagnant.
Because once you have the gain staging all set up, and that's the other thing is there are so many layers to gain staging on this thing.
There is.
That the audio coming out of the DAW can be adjusted, the gain staging on the board can be adjusted, the gain staging on the buses can be adjusted. It's insane how much there is to gain stage. Plus, in the outboard gear, they're all gain staging, all the outboard gear. The other thing that we worked out is how to do parallel compression and effects in the box. And send them to dedicated faders on the board to blend into the mix, so that we were trying to figure out if we could do like a Shep's rear bus technique with one of the buses to send everything to an outboard compressor. But what we figured out was, after talking through it for a while, is we can group effects inside the bus and just send that out as a stereo pair to 2 faders on the board and blend in any effects that we're doing. And we can do the same thing with parallel compression.
Right.
So the way we parallel compress all the now with sending different groups to different parallel compressors, we can do the same thing and then group that to one stereo group in the DAW
called parallel compression,
and then send it to a set of faders to blend in on the board, which is going to simplify greatly a lot of the effects stuff that we've been trying to figure out.
Yeah, the effects stuff was the one kind of sticking point because we didn't want to have to buy more I/O because of the cost, even though the board is capable of handling it. And I did pick up a reverb hardware unit that will be here next week to try it, to use, because we have 4 aux sends on the board. So we can use those 4 auxes as effects, reverbs, delays, whatever. But even beyond that, then as we talked through it, we said, well, we can still use a reverb plugin, let's say on a lead vocal. You would create an effects track in the DAW, just like you do now. You would send your lead vocal track to that effects track, and then both of those tracks can go to a group in the DAW, and then that group track comes out to a stereo pair on the board. And then you make your blend in your DAW, how much reverb you want on your vocal, for example, and then you can blend it in here. So it ends up going through the mix bus compressor, because in the end, every single element in the DAW has to be on the board in order to get it processed through the mix bus, the master bus chain, which is the Fusion and the mix bus compressor, to print back in. So it really is, as we said, it really is hybrid mixing. It's an analog workflow, but it really is hybrid because you're still doing a lot of comping, a lot of blending. Not a lot, but you're doing some depending on the session in the box, and you're organizing the session and blending the session in a way to spill it out onto the board. And then you're taking, once it hits the board, it's all analog right through all the way back in, right? So that's a lot. We got a lot done. I mean, we really did. We figured out a lot, and now we think that we only need.
We need one more D sub cable,
and then we need one more. We know we need another patch bay.
Oh yeah, because we ran out of patch bay
really quickly,
really fast.
So we had one 96 point patch bay. We're not going to need a full 96 point, but we're going to get one, and that will give us all the patch bay that we need for the immediate for probably the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, what that's going to let us do is that's going to let us dedicate one patch bay. Is going to be the I/O to the board. So all the I/O feeds and sends back into the board is going to be one patch bay.
Right.
And then we're going to set all the hardware up in the other patch bay, and then we're just going to jump between the 2 patch bays to get everything all patched together. And like I said, once we get those chains plugged in, we're not unplugging them.
Yeah, even though there's a bunch of cables down here, that's just to keep everything patched. Our goal for now, because of the limited amount of hardware that we have, and because we're trying to assign hardware to buses in specific channels, to kind of leave it. I'm sure down the road there'll be a point in time where you may want to put one compressor on a vocal as opposed to another. But you could still do that in the box if you wanted to. So, for example, if you wanted to use a Fairchild compressor, and we don't have one of those in hardware. Well,
We'd like one, though. If anybody has a Fairchild, we'll take it.
But we can still use a Fairchild plugin in the box and not process it with hardware if you wanted to. You can blend it in the box, and as long as the only thing is that when you do that, it's going to be you'll have compression, then it'll hit the EQ on the board. You're not going to go. You can't reverse that unless you use the plugin to EQ it, compress it, and then run it flat on the board if you wanted to.
Which is fine too.
Which is fine too. You know, it really doesn't matter.
But then again, too, at this point too, we do have 4 aux sends that we're going to have 4 auxiliary sends, 4 stereo pairs of auxiliary sends.
Right. Yep.
So we can use one of those. Like, let's just say we wanted to run the bass into the diode,
a certain compressor,
into something. Or the LA2A. We could do that through an aux send and then back in with the patch bay. Those are that's where the patch bay is going to be more mobile, is assigning the aux sends to different pieces of hardware, because we are planning on dedicating specific hardware to each bus at this point.
That's what we're going to do. Each bus is going to have the master bus's dedicated hardware. Each of the 8 buses, that will have dedicated hardware, and then that's kind of it for now. I mean, if you get more hardware, you can always do that, but we're trying to keep it
under control
and simple. You can have a million possibilities. We can get million. It could be just like one of the things I don't want to get into is kind of like what you do with plugins sometimes, is that you have so many choices that you spend half your time trying to figure out which compressor to use or which EQ to use. I want to, at least for now, we're only going to use dedicated on the buses. We're going to use the SSL channel strip for the in-the-box compression in the EQ, and we're going to use the EQ on the board. And that's really it. And even for the plugins that we installed, I only installed the Universal Audio stuff because I have it, and maybe one or two other plugins for utility, and that's it. I didn't load a bunch of plugins into the system because I didn't want us to have too many choices. So part of working hybrid and working somewhat analog is limitations, and that's a good thing. Make the stuff that you have sound great, because we got great stuff here. There's no cheap entry-level pieces here. We have all really good high-quality stuff. You should be able to use your engineering skills to get the mix. You don't need to have 500 different options.
But one of the things we did learn today too, now that we've got it wired up to the point that we have it, is there are almost unlimited possibilities to this.
For routing,
and so on and so forth. The possibilities are almost limitless of what you can do. But it's what do you want to do with it, and how big do you want it to get? And the idea now is like, hey, listen, at this point, we've got enough. Let's use it.
Yeah, we're big enough right now. The Origin is nice in that, and again, maybe other consoles are this way as well. I don't have any experience with them, but I would assume they are on some level. But the one thing about the Origin that is I like is that from a mixing perspective, and this is, I mean, it's a recording desk, yes, but they really had mixing first and foremost in mind as far as the amount of flexibility you have with the way you can route things in and out. Anything could be routed anywhere, and if you have the right amount of I/O in the right patch bays, you can really do almost anything you can imagine. And again, I would assume most inline consoles are the same way, and that so there isn't. You're not really limited. You're only limited by, like you said, how crazy do you want to get, and how much supporting I/O and patch bays and hardware do you want to patch into this thing. I'm still under the thing where I want to keep it simple, and it's still, even though it may seem a little bit complex, it's actually pretty simple. When we first started this last week, and we were still trying to understand and wrap our head around some of the routing, it seemed confusing, but once we got it figured out, it is very logical in the way this works. It's not that complicated.
They laid it out very well. There's I only have one major issue with it, which I'm going to talk to SSL about one day. But other than that, I mean, I still don't like the fact that they share the master out with anything else.
It's on a D sub. So if you have eight cables, eight cables, 8 connections on the main out, when you only need 2, you can only use 2, and then the other 6 are kind of lost.
Well, at this point, though, it's because like they're sharing the master out is sharing the master insert sent on the same D sub.
That's a little strange.
It's a little strange because that's why I have to jumper the master out on the patch bay to the X16, which I would prefer to be able to just run the master out straight to the X16. I would prefer that rather than have it running through the patch bay, because that's multiple points of possible noise or failure. I would much prefer being able to run one D sub. You're wasting a D sub. I get that. But I would have preferred being able to run D sub from the master out on the board to the X16 for your master in and be done with it. They don't give us that option, so I had to jumper it on the patch bay to make it work. Okay, it worked. Great.
It's an extra step, and maybe there's a reason for it. We're going to ask just because we're curious to know. But we got it to work. So that's kind of where we are. So, I mean, we're up and running, and now once we get the second patch bay in a few weeks and add the reverb unit and get all the rest of the hardware assigned to the buses, now it's just time to work on it, mix, create a lot more content, and then we'll get a little bit more up close and higher quality video walking you through the console. A lot of you already in the comments of the first handful of videos that went up on the channel are asking a lot of questions about the Origin, specific things that can be done and how it's done. So that's where we'll get a little bit more detailed and show you things up close.
Yeah. We want to get it running first.
Yeah,
and
learn and really
you know.
understand it before I can show it to you. I want to understand how does this all work so you really get it. And then we just spend the next 6 months on it mixing and just working on lots of different sessions.
Yeah.
You know, going from one session to another and making sure, does our template hold true? Are there a couple of different templates? Maybe there are. Maybe there's a better way to route the matrix. We don't know. We think we got it, but until you do a bunch of mixes on it, you just don't know.
Yeah. At this point, this is all speculative.
Yeah.
At this point, like we're looking at it from the point of view of people that have been mixing in the box for a long time.
Right.
And like, okay, this kind of makes sense to do it this way right now.
Right.
But you never know, 6 months from now, we may have this thing completely redone again.
Yeah, we
don't know.
We don't know until you start working through it a bunch.
But I thought we both feel that we've got it in a really good place right now.
Yeah.
And like I said, one more D-sub cable and another patch bay to get everything routed in properly, and that whole rack is going to be integrated into it then.
Integrated in,
and we'll be running with it.
We'll be rocking and rolling, and that's when all the mixing videos will start to come out, the demonstrations and showing you things. And
A/B comparisons to in the box and out of the box.
Yeah.
That's the big one I know of. That's the one I want to do.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll go through each piece of gear and demo it and make it its own video so you can see each piece of gear and how it works. We'll do all of that. Eventually, we will do the same session where we mix it all this way and then bring that same session and go back into the box and just do all plugins and do A/B. Just, not that one's better or worse, just what are the differences.
Yep.
And that will help us learn and be able to teach everybody where does the analog really hold up above the digital, and where does the digital so close that it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why hybrid, it's the mixture of both worlds. And who knows? We may find that, hey, you know what? One of these pieces we really don't need. It can go because we got a plugin that is just as good. There's no reason to have that. Use that and get something else to could do the thing that the plugin can't do. So for me, the hardware, the whole goal around having the different select pieces is getting the stuff that the plugins just aren't up to the challenge yet. Or a specific piece of hardware where there's no plugin that currently does that.
Yeah. And also to a place where a plugin, we just can't route it that way.
Right. And then maybe right, either then the plugin will have to suffice, or the hardware will, depending on what the situation is. But to me, that's all sitting down and learning and doing lots of mixes on it. And the more you work on it, the more you're going to figure out what works, what doesn't work, just like you do when you mix in the box. What plugins work, what doesn't work, what techniques work, what techniques don't work as well. And it's a totally different thing. And then we will go over because there's already questions about recall and some of the concerns that a lot of people have about the recall. And there is. It's not a recallable board. There is no recall on this board.
Yeah.
So if you want to recall a board, you can do it. I have a couple of different apps I've been playing with, so you could do it through an app. You don't have to write down the settings. There's other ways to capture the session, and then to bring it back up to life if you had to. What's involved in that? And where does it make sense? Where doesn't it make sense? I can tell you, just in shopping for consoles, the only console that I found that will do recall, that has this many audio channels, you're looking at 120,000 minimum, and that was the SSL AWS, which ironically was the first console I actually looked at before this, because it had recall, but it doesn't have full recall. So a lot of people don't understand that the SSL desks don't have flying faders.
Right.
The Duality might, but the Duality is 200,000. But I'm saying the AWS series is 110K cost. That does not have flying faders. It doesn't have digital controlled EQs like the Wes Audio stuff. You still have to manually turn the pots. The difference is they have a software in there called Recall Assist, where it'll scan the physical positions, and on a screen it'll tell you where you're off, and then you have to physically turn it and line up the two marks to get it recalled.
Yeah.
So it makes it easier because you don't need to take settings down, but you still got to physically touch all the pots on the board.
And there's a lot of them.
And there's a lot of them. So, and it doesn't have moving faders. Now, if you go to the duality, that might be different, but now you're talking high level, high pro studio stuff, way out of my budget.
Yeah.
The next other console that you can look at is the Genesis series, the Neve Genesis Black. And I looked at a Neve Genesis Black. A Neve Genesis Black with 32 faders is 150 grand. Now that has flying faders. It will total recall, where all the faders go back to the position, kind of like a DAW. It has EQ and compression in the board that are digitally controlled like Wes Audio. But you're looking at, for 32 channels of that, you're looking at $200,000.
Yeah.
This is $48,000.
Yeah.
So so the recall, believe me, that was my number one concern when I first started this journey was recall.
Yeah.
But the more that I thought it through, and the more that I talked to people that have used these, and guys that work on consoles, if you can find the sweet spots and set stuff where you can set and forget, in some of this board you can, some you can't, you're going to have to recall it. But the one thing that I've learned in the half a day that I spent down here working on it is how quickly you could get a sound on this thing. That I feel like the mixing process is going to be so much faster than what it was in the box, that any time that you have to spend recalling it, even if it was 30 minutes to recall a session, over, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When you look at the total time it takes you to mix something versus mix faster and recall, I still think it's going to be a time saver. Yeah, it's going to be a pain, but some of it we might be able to reduce. And I got to learn that. I just got to learn it as we go. But I don't think it's going to be as bad as...
No.
And also, too...
And honestly, how often?
Well, yeah. Well, here's
how often do you have to do a mix recall?
Well,
really?
Well, here's the thing. The people that ask that question, and it's a valid question, is that if you had to mix all of this way or all in the box, and you had to make that choice, I get it. If you're someone that's used to working in the box and you're opening up multiple sessions a week, and if you went all analog, that's a problem. Believe me, that's why when I did this, I left my other workstation, right? We talked, at least on the Home Recording Made Easy channel, we talked about that. Everything that I do for Home Recording Made Easy, mixingmadeeasy.net, all the YouTube videos, all the tutorials, and all the courses, that is all still done in the box on a separate workstation. So I have all that recallability, because there are days where I have to open up 4 sessions a day.
Yeah.
But this is a totally separate workflow.
Yeah. So
the stuff that I know that I'm not going to do plug-in demos on this console. I'm going to do it over there in the box, So yes, there is some recall time that's going to be spent, but I think overall, in the end, it's a faster workflow. We know it's, what we just pulled up even before, and we didn't even EQ anything. We just turned on the Fusion, dialed in a little bit of compression, and went. The sound was there in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
That you don't get in the box. You just don't. You just don't. And so, again, it's not a bad thing or a good thing. That's just a point of fact. And that's, again, part of what we're trying to do on this channel, is to be objective and unbiased about, it's not trying to sell anybody on this, and I'm not trying to sell anybody on in the box. I'm just sharing, and we're just sharing our experience. What do we notice? I know the box really well. I know what it can and can't do, and that'll be interesting to see how this compares to it. That's all. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, it's a hell of a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun.
So
it's amazing. Like we hit the play button, and I literally just shoved the faders up. I wasn't even paying attention to it. I just pushed all the faders up, hit the play button, and spent 2 minutes just jiggling the faders around a little bit. And we had a mix. It's not perfect by a long shot.
No, we didn't EQ anything. There was no compression except what was on. A couple of compressors, the Fusion, the G-Bus compressor, and the Drum Bus compressor. And we were like, wow.
Sounds great.
That sounds really great. I don't know how many times I've done that in the box and went, wow, as soon as I do the faders up. It's usually got to put, a litany of plugins across everything, open up every individual window, dial it all in. And once you do that, but that, console emulation, tape machine plugins, all the things that we would do to set the mix up, that takes an hour, and
and in this it took 5 minutes.
And in here it's all done for you. So that's some of the differences, But anyhow, so that's kind of where we are. So hopefully you found
Some of this interesting.
Some of it interesting. Again, if you have any questions or any comments, leave them below. And if you're someone who works in an analog workflow like we do and have more experience and want to give some advice and chime in and give us some of your experience, I'd love to hear it. It would be very helpful to us. And the next time we'll see you is when we come back to do the second patch bay and get the rest of the hardware in, which won't be for probably a few weeks, but we're going to get to it. In the meantime, you guys will see videos at least one a week for the next several weeks. They're already been recorded, and we'll split this video up over 3 or 4 videos as well.
Yep.
And that'll be it. So that's it for now. Thanks so much. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share, and let people know we do appreciate it. And we will see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody.